Welcome everybody for another podcast today. This is a very interesting one. It's something that every one of us is constantly questioning. Every one of us is constantly wondering. Is it the mixed signal, or is it this hint that you're not picking up, or is it the fight that that you're not able to move on from, or it's the question that's bothering you constantly? That why do I not get swipes or likes on my Tinder or Bumble or whatever the app that you use to date? So we are sitting down in the corner with Dr.Sarah, Kyle, 25-year experienced relationship therapist. Thank you so much for joining us today, and it's really pleasure talking to you about this topic, a very burning topic in the social media era. That what is exactly going on, and on that note, welcome to Take Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much. So, before we dive into any of the topic regarding the whole dating scene, in the 25 years of your experience talking to people regarding their relationships, what are the trends that you've noticed? That how are they changing as from the from the past to today's trend?
I think that now people are so much more stressed out about dating. I don't think dating used to be as stressful. And I think with the advent of online dating being almost exclusively how people meet each other now, it's just caused a lot more problems for people.
That is that. So, how what would you say if somebody asks you? So, where did this online dating completely start, or took the spike from?
That's a great question. There's research that online dating actually started in the 1960s, which sounds crazy because we didn't even really have computers then, but they were using some kind of giant IBM computer to match people using an algorithm. It didn't really take off until the mid 90s. I think 1995 was when Match.com became a thing.
Okay.
And then with the advent of the iPhone or the smartphone and apps, then it really took off a little bit later. I think Tinder came about in 2012. So I would say from 95 until 2012, things were kind of growing. And now it's the way we meet each other.
So, I mean, honestly, if I have to take the position of talking from the age group that I come from, honestly, that is really true. That today, the whole scene of dating honestly sits down in the fact of meeting people online,
Yep.
talking to them over there.
Mhm.
So, and do you think it's still being the single prime contributor to dating, or do you think it's declining, or is it going some other way?
It's definitely declining. People are really unhappy with it. People are leaving the apps in droves, just hoping to find someone in person. In-person events are coming back, like speed dating or singles events, things like that. People are seeking those out a lot more than they were 5 years ago. And I think it's just because people are realizing that online dating doesn't work the way that they thought it was going to, and the apps have changed a little bit. So yes, I think it is declining now.
So, I mean, if you have to sum up the whole, if you must have had clients who talk about their online dating and stuff. So if you have to sum up the whole experience of them being there, so what are the few problems that they're facing because of online dating?
Part of it is that you don't meet someone in person, and people are much more likely to behave badly online when they're not meeting you in person. So that means not being honest. It means ghosting. It means kind of breadcrumbing or stringing people along. So there are all these things that happen when you're not meeting someone face to face that generally don't happen the same way in person.
So they generally say this. I mean, with the experience of the whole thing itself, people often tend to try to behave as good as they can to you while they text you, but that's not something that their actual personality is.
I think that's absolutely true. Faking good is a very common thing.
And how do you what do you think? What about ghosting? Like, because I mean, generally, if you look at the whole like the process of matching, so you have right swiped somebody or you liked somebody is what process, which means you're interested in the person.
Mhm.
Yet there comes the fact of ghosting,
Mhm.
despite not even meeting, or at least so this happens on apps. Like,
Yeah.
you match with somebody, you text them, they text one message,
Mhm.
and then you never see them back communicating again.
Yep.
What do you think is the reason behind it?
I think there are various reasons behind it. Number one, I think is lack of communication skills. That it's much easier for me to just disappear than to say, hey, I didn't really like you because of these things that you said. I decided not to go out with you. You bring up this idea of getting one message from someone and then they disappear. What I actually see happening equally as often is you have multiple messages with someone. You might even have a date or two with someone and then they completely ghost. And so that, I think the thing behind that is lack of good communication skills. I also think that it's a numbers game, especially for men, that men have to play the odds and they have to be messaging with multiple women. And I think that, say, you're messaging with 10 women and one of them seems more promising, then you might just disappear from those other 9 while you're pursuing the one.
That is true. That does make sense, because oftentimes what happens is it's like you are looking for a, let's say you're trying to find a meal somewhere, and then you want to eat. Despite of calling 10 restaurants, you pick up the one that says open first.
Yes, absolutely.
They're hungry.
Yep.
That's something that people generally tend to do, and that's not. So how different do you think women and men having their experience on dating app, and who are being on the better side?
I would say that I think men are ghosting. If we're talking specifically about ghosting, I think men are ghosting in higher numbers. I think women are the ones that are ghosting because it's too embarrassing to tell someone or it's too awkward to tell someone why you don't want to go out with them.
So, and how about your experience of dating, where not just ghosting? So let's say the likes they get, the swipes that they get, the time on the app. So I think is being on the better side, on the brighter side of that.
I guess it depends what you mean by the brighter side of it. I think that men are spending more time on the app statistically. And I think that men are getting swiped on much less than women. I think women get lots of likes and lots of swipes, and men don't get as many. Um, so statistically, I believe the current statistic is that 10% of men are getting 90% of the likes and on the apps. And I don't think that statistic is true for women. I think women have way more choices.
Absolutely. Yeah. So basically, I can tell you this. Let's say something that I've been looking at this podcast. So I came across this report that somebody have tried. So they have, it's just 2 people, one guy and a girl. They both went onto an app just to experiment. In given 24-hour window, how many likes do they get?
Okay.
In the first hour itself, the girl have crossed the mark of 100, and the guy haven't even got one in 24 hours. 24 hours, what the guy has spent is to just carry on swiping. After a point, they have the limits you to do that.
Unless you pay.
Yeah, unless you pay. So, looking at all the senses of this whole thing, where do you think psychologically this affects the people? Because, girl has the attention by default, while the guy is craving for that. And then ultimately, he meets somebody. And still there are 2 entities who's craving for the attention one, who already has the attention the other. And now these 2 people are trying to date each other, or they want to spend time with each other. So it's a constant competition for the guy to meet up a standard for that particular girl, because she's already having X amount of attention in her DMs or the app or wherever she is on social media.
Yeah.
How is psychologically affecting people?
I think it's affecting both men and women negatively. And of course, we're talking about heterosexual relationships, and it's a whole other thing for same sex relationships. But so I think it affects men negatively because they're swiping on 100 women and not getting any response. And I think it affects women negatively because, in general, of course, there are definitely exceptions to all of these things. But I think in general, women are looking for a real connection and women are looking for relationships. And even though, 100 guys might be swiping on her, she's looking for quality, not quantity. And so it's not satisfying her either to have all these likes.
That does make sense to some cohort, that I do agree about. But what do you think about the culture that's going around the whole dating apps? Because if you see, let's say there are 100 men that use dating apps, I would, there are no statistics for this, but And I'm expecting it at least 90% of them are looking for a hookup.
Yep.
It's nothing more than that.
Yep.
So what do you think, or how does this affect the whole, and what, according to you, what do you think about the culture? Do you think it's good, bad, and how does it affect other human beings living?
So I don't know that I want to classify it as good or bad, but what I would say is, are people actually getting satisfied by it? I think the answer to that is no. I don't think men are getting satisfied by that, and I don't think women are getting satisfied by it. I think what happens is it brings out people's bad behavior because men are trying to be on best behavior so they can hook up with someone. And women are buying into that and thinking the guy's into her when really all he's looking for is a hookup. So, ultimately, it's not emotionally satisfying for either of them at the end of the day.
That I did that too, so much because. And what do you think about women? I mean, of course, there exist some of them who are also into the culture of
Sure.
hookup. They prefer it to be that way.
Yep.
And what do you think is the origin of this? Because
Hmm.
being human beings,
Mhm.
so actually, let me ask you this question first. Being human beings, let's say from Adam and Eve,
Mhm.
they always heard it in couples or pairs. So psychologically, do you think a human does need, no matter what, a companion or a partner in his life?
I would not say that across the board. I think people need a companion. I think what people need is human connection. I think people need emotional connection. And sometimes that comes in the form of a partner, and sometimes that comes in the form of a community. But I think ultimately, if what you're doing is just going around and hooking up casually with people and never making a real emotional connection, that you're not going to be that satisfied at the end of the day.
So, so basically, so you suggest that it's humans are prone to have companionship, right?
Yes.
So, with the ideology of that, so it's emotional hunger.
Yep.
People tend to have somebody to listen when they talk, somebody to share their life story about their struggles, happiness, everything. And looking at the culture of hookup, it has nothing but pretty much an hour or two of flirting.
Yeah.
And they meet, they have a sexual relationship for that one night or maybe a couple of nights, something. And then after a point, they just don't see each other.
Yep.
And sometimes down the lane, they will forget that there existed a person like that. So, what do you think would be the origin of this story? Where did this whole thing come from?
I think that over time we've gotten away from the morality. So our country was founded by deists who believed that religion was good for the masses.
Yeah.
And so that those sort of strict puritanical values were part of our country's heritage. And I think over time we've evolved or devolved, I guess, depending on your point of view, but we've gotten away from adhering to religious values. And so there's nothing that prevents people from acting on those desires. So I think most religions say that, sex is something to be reserved for marriage.
Yeah.
And I know Christianity does, and I think other religions do as well.
I'm Hindu,
Also,
and it's the same thing for us.
yeah.
So they generally tend to, it should be one woman man.
Yep.
You marry somebody, and then that's when the whole act of sexual relationship starts.
Yep. And so if you're getting away from that, if you're not being guided by religious principles, then there's nothing that really stops you from, I mean, humans want to have sex. It's the way that we're wired. And if there's not a religious thing in place that's preventing people from doing that, I think over time it's just become easier to hook up and not feel guilty about it.
I also have another question because now this is something that psychologically does matter is what I think. Do you think maybe because of the boundary of religion that constantly reached the fact that you shouldn't be doing this because it's wrong might have intrigued the ideology? Let's see what happens if we do it.
Yeah.
It drove them towards trying and getting addicted to the fact of trying it constantly.
Yeah, probably. You mentioned Adam and Eve. That story goes back all the way to those origins. It's like you can eat any of the fruit in this garden, but not that one. And so which one were they drawn?
Exactly.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's like you put the light on something, say, see, this is bad.
Yep.
So we better not go there. So it automatically creates the thought in the human head that, okay, wait, why is it bad?
Yeah.
And what happens if I do it?
Yep.
Uh, okay, I'm born by doing that. Now, why am I even supposed to or entitled or try that? So it's basically, don't you think that is something have given them the factor? Okay, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. The casual dating scene in itself. And with your experience of 24 years, right? You've, uh, I won't ask your age, but of course, in the last few years, there are multiple terms that have been coined. Some says flirtationship, situationship, breadcrumbing, this thing hanged or something. I don't know. There's a lot of these things.
Uh-huh.
And how do you see them? Because now there used to be an institution called marriage, which means wife and husband.
Yep.
It came down to relationship, girlfriend, boyfriend. Now it came down to a point where there is no title itself. They call it situationship, they call it relationship, they call it flirtationship, friends with benefits.
Yep.
There is a lot of these things. So how do you see this whole set of things evolving constantly, and where do you think as a person it's going towards? Do you think it's going towards the ideology of it's fine until unless you are fine, or you think it will end up on the bad side itself? Like it's going to be driving towards selective.
I think things happen in cycles, and I think the pendulum swings one way and then it swings the other way. And so I think eventually it will probably swing back to a more conservative view. It's speaking about the terms. I think this is so interesting because I have kids that are adults, and I have a lot of clients that are young adults and friends that are young adults. And it's so hard for me to keep up with the terms. Someone was recently telling me that being exclusive with someone was a bad thing. And I was like, oh, I thought exclusivity just meant you weren't seeing anyone else. And she was explaining to me that it has this whole sort of sub meaning.
What is it?
Let me see if I can explain it, and I might be getting this wrong. But she said, if a guy asks a woman to be exclusive, that just means that they're not having sex with anyone else, but their emotional options are still on the table. Like he could still be out there online looking for someone else, but he's just not hooking up with anyone else. I didn't understand it to mean that. But so to me, that would be a step forward in a relationship. Like we're moving this thing to something more serious. And she was like, no, that's not what that means. It just means that you're taking yourself off the table sexually so that both people could still keep looking at their options. I was like, okay. Anyway, I think they're
basically not take them off. That's what I said. So basically, it's that you're still finding people who are better according to your
yes,
decisions.
exactly.
But it's just you're not cheating on your part.
No, because you're not sleeping with anyone else. And so there's a difference. This person's explanation was there's a difference between being boyfriend and girlfriend. That's a more serious thing. But if you're just saying that you're exclusive, that's not taking you off the table emotionally. You're still out there looking for the better option.
You know, I guess I'm also new to these things. Because I'm thinking, this is not something I ever thought of. You know, yesterday I was reading through the papers and stuff regarding the podcast. At some point of like, I was thinking, okay, now I'm having questions on my own life. It's like, where is my life going to do that thing? So, talking, since you've mentioned about the boyfriend, girlfriend, or anything. So, uh, what I personally think is there exist multi layers in when it comes to compatibility. So, if you're talking about the whole idea of dating somebody, so you're looking for a long-term relationship. So, there are, it is heavily multi layered when it comes to compatibility. You need to essentially be emotionally compatible, financially compatible. So, how would you rank that, or how would you explain to somebody that these, let's say, few of the compatibility checkboxes that you need to check before finding or understanding that this is the right person that you can date?
Compatibility is a really complex issue. And as you said, it's multi-layered. And I think you have to ask yourself what your goals are. Because if you want someone you can have amazing sex with for the rest of your life, then sexual compatibility should be at the top of your list. If you want someone that you can be emotionally happy with, then there's a whole other set of criteria. If you want someone that's going to provide financial stability for you, then that would be a different set of criteria. As someone who, has lived on the planet for a long time, I would say that emotional compatibility seems to be the highest as far as correlation with happiness. That you could have great sex with someone, but if you're fighting with them all the time and your life is in turmoil all the time, I don't think you're going to be happy growing old with that person. And so I think there has to be some combination of all of those things. Like if you are really emotionally compatible, but you're poor and you can't pay your bills, then you're going to be super frustrated. So,
I always think that despite people can claim that they want that amazing sex in their life and they want to hang it high. If the rest of these things, if you're not emotionally bonded with somebody, maybe you can have it once, twice, thrice. After a point, one of you guys is frustrated. So you got to be in the zone of thinking that, okay, I want to have this with him, her at this point. We don't work like that.
Yep.
Because you're constantly fighting, there's a surrounding tension among you and you're not happy. And then of course you're not driven towards that person or attracted to that person. So uh summing up the whole idea that the dating apps not helping people to find a long term relationship. It's most of them. And that brings us to the point which I was really interested or intrigued in. Get Dateable, the company that you're running right now, which is backed by scientific approach of dating.
It's backed by research that I've done with my business partners. Yep.
I would like to know about what exactly happens in it and how, like, what are the trends that you have understood or what's the research that backs the concept?
That's a great question. So when I came up with this idea, it was because as a therapist, I keep having clients come in that are dissatisfied with the process. And I was like, there has to be a better way of doing this. If you think about, I'm just going to take a side track here for a minute. The app's goal is to keep you paying. They only make money if they keep people interested.
Yeah.
If you find a partner, guess what? You're not a paying customer anymore. So at the end of the day, their goal isn't actually to kick you off of their service so that you're no longer paying them. So if you think about that, their interest is in gamifying it and keeping you swiping and keeping you engaged. That's not how you're going to find a partner. So going back to the research piece, when I was thinking about this, what I did was I surveyed a bunch of single people. I surveyed a bunch of people who were in long-term happy relationships. And I also surveyed a bunch of mental health providers. And what I asked them, the people that were in relationships, are what are the qualities of your partner that have kept you together and happy this long? For the single people, I asked them, what are red flags that you see
in
dating? Like when you're out there dating, what are the things that would turn you off or make you say no to this person? And for the mental health providers, I asked them, when you think about long-term mental health, what are the qualities that you see in your clients that have solid, stable mental health?
Right.
So I aggregated all of that information and created an assessment so that people can sort of see what are the things I'm doing well? What are the things that I need to work on in order to become the most ideal partner? Yeah. Yep.
That's how you came up with the idea of dating.
Yes.
And are you comfortable sharing about how what exactly happens in dating?
Sure. It's evolved over time. So I started it a little less than a year ago, so about 11 months ago. And my idea was I wanted it to be like an in-person version of online dating. So I imagined not exactly matchmaking, but bringing people together so that they could meet each other in person. And I quickly realized that the scale of that was outside of what I'm able to do because I have a full-time therapy practice.
Oh, okay.
So how it's evolved over time is that what we're doing now is helping people become their most dateable selves so that they will attract their ideal partner.
So you're saying most dateable self. What exactly that?
Yeah. So what that means is if you're being authentic, if you're sort of meeting the measuring stick of all the things that we're looking for in our assessment. So that means you have good financial stability, you have good emotional stability, you're a good human being, you take good care of yourself physically. All of these markers, you're going to attract a better quality of partner. And so if you focus on being the ideal partner, you have a much better chance of attracting your ideal partner. Yeah. So that's what we help people work on that. I can date them.
Basically, if I don't know if I can share this. I mean, you just tell me and
Yeah, sure.
so basically what happens in when get dateable that you run is a person comes in, he fills his details, the order with your
Takes the assessment.
takes assessment, and once you feel this person fits in the block, and then you let him meet people in the same pool.
That was our original idea. Since then, we've actually just become a coaching service. So
You basically
oh,
coach people
yes,
into the ideology of understanding that what you should be looking in the other your partner, but you don't make them meet somebody.
correct.
He finds somebody in his own pattern.
Yep.
Or in surroundings.
Maybe online, maybe in at the neighborhood.
But you make them understand the fact that this is how you have to be.
Yes.
Find somebody else.
Yep.
Rather than, it's go around and find out that whatever you can be, and then eventually you're impersonating somebody else.
Yes. I'll give you an example of that. So one of our clients at Get Dateable is a super nice guy. He came in and he was, let me think of how to say this delicately. He was dressed in a way like he was dressed kind of in a sloppy way. He was wearing, not a stylish shirt, and it was kind of untucked. And he didn't look like he cared a lot about his appearance. When I asked him what kind of person he was interested in meeting, he described someone that was very trendy and fashionable. And so the idea is that you look in the mirror at yourself and you say, well, am I trendy and fashionable? No, then I can't expect to attract a partner that's trendy and fashionable, if that makes sense. And that's just one small example. If I want someone who is financially stable, am I financially stable? I got to work on that first, right?
I see what you're. So you're basically saying you have to eliminate hypocrisy.
Yes, exactly.
You can't be a man. Be a basic example. Can't be a person who walks around the street shirtless and expect a girl or wear revealing clothes.
Right. Yes.
To make it most touching for the people who are watching.
Yes.
Would be the best example. Then you can't be walking around the street shirtless.
Yes.
Pose your body to people and get called you have a good body as man,
Yes.
and expect your girl or anybody that you're dating not to wear revealing clothes and have the same kind of potential.
Exactly. So if I said to you, and let's just do this exercise right now, I'm not going to ask you to say it out loud, but imagine the kind of person that you would ideally want to be with. Like, get a picture of her in your head. Okay. Now, let's say you walk down the street and you see her on the street and she's with a partner. Are you like that guy that she's with? Are you that kind of guy that she would pick? And if you're not, then what's the difference? So this is kind of what you have to go through. Like, oh, well, she's with a guy who's dressed a certain way. Am I dressed that certain way? No, I'm not. Like, oh, she's with a guy who's really polite and nice and opens the door for her. Do I do those things? So it's that exercise.
So basically, you're trying to find out what your type of girl is by figuring out what who are actually as a person are.
Kind of, yes. I would probably say it the other way around, but yes, that's the general idea. Is who would my ideal partner want to be with? Is it me? Well, then how do I become that person if it's not me?
I mean, how? So I will ask this around on a little divergent level. That is, as we have spoken about the whole ideology of, compatibility and everything. I would love to know what gradient of looks in the whole scene of dating, because you see these, as I said, the fake intellects that you find all across the globe talking that it doesn't matter. Looks is not everything. It is nothing to do date somebody, but yet they date people who actually look good. I never seen this. Say I don't want to take names. They'll not because they'll watch my stand. These are my friends. We hang out often, and then they often tell me this thing that looks doesn't matter. It's fine. I mean, uh, it's not a big deal. We look for compatibility. For that, if I can sit here with somebody and talk to them. Yet I have not seen them dating one person who is less attractive than them.
Yes. So this is also an interesting thing. A lot of things are not divided along gender lines, but some things are. So do a little experiment and look around at how many women do you see that are with a guy who's not that attractive?
Very yes.
Fairly often.
Oh, very often?
Yeah. But how many men do you see that are with a woman that's less attractive than them?
That I would say very less.
Yes, very few. So what I think in general, again, there are exceptions to this, but I think that women are most often willing to look beyond looks. And I mean, sort of basic, decent looks. Women are okay if a guy has basic, decent looks. I mean, if he's, doesn't take care of himself, then that's a different thing. But if he's someone who takes pretty good care of himself, he's an okay dresser, his haircut's all right, he's in okay shape, women are like, okay, what kind of personality do you have? Yes, let's go. Men, I don't think are like that. I think men are much less likely to be like, I mean, she's a 6, but she's really nice. Like, nope.
This podcast is getting personal. So that because I would say that I would be the defense lawyer for you guys. Don't worry. So I would actually say one trouble that we as guys have is basically we are prone to something that is out of the league as the creature itself. Yeah, they could have sit in a cave and led their life waiting for sunrise. They had to rub the stones to find the spot. We always want something that is not possible.
Yes, I think.
It creates the drama in life when people are let go.
Yep.
So that's where even this comes in. They want it. They know that if this is section of people, that if I ask them for a date, they'll say yes. They don't want them. They want somebody is who's above in scale than them. Yes. It's a fight there. So okay, now I have to put in effort, invest. Let's find out will this happen or not.
Yep.
The famous dialogue in one of the Bollywood. I translate into English. It's in Hindi actually.
Okay.
So the actor we had a discussion with his friend, and he says that the girl that I want don't want me, but the girl that wants me wants
Yep.
her.
I think that is a very true sentiment in all cultures, right? Yeah.
Wants her than the girl that wants me.
Yes.
So I want so basically it's the circle that you get stuck into. So what the person you want doesn't want you.
Yep.
And you don't want the person that wants you. So it's like continuous cycle that we stuck into. And where do you see the overall background of a human being as? So how does I mean this is a question that often gets to internet because I came here when I was 17. 17 years of my life I've grown in a culture that's heavily different from the place I'm living in.
Yeah.
How do you think such kind of things affect a relationship or the whole scene of being in a relationship or dating somebody?
I think it depends on the personality. I think some people thrive on that, like the differences, and they like learning about other cultures. They don't mind adopting traditions from other cultures. And I think for a lot of people, that's really hard that we continuously go back to the way that we were raised. And so we tend to gravitate toward, I mean, if you think about that, if you go into any group of people, you see like people sitting with like people, right?
Yeah.
And so I think in relationships, the same thing is mostly true, but definitely not across the board. There are a lot of successful intercultural relationships. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, one more thing that I personally kind of something that I always felt a good strategy of life is if you're marrying or dating somebody who's from a different culture, it lets your life be always interesting because you're learning. Each of you is learning something new.
Yes,
By the time you both get bored of this thing, you're already like into your 50s, I guess.
exactly.
You don't have anything more to do apart from getting bored at that age. So, and before we head completely into talking about how to maintain a healthy relationship, I have one more thing.
Okay.
This is something that also again, I love to bust these myths on social media. So I want to know from the professional itself. There is this constant news that we find where guy looks for his mother in a girl and the girl looks for dad in a boyfriend. How true is it? Because I don't see much in the history of mine. I don't see much differences to support this statement. So what do you think about it?
So I just want to clarify. So you're saying that you haven't dated women that reminded you of your mother, or you have?
No.
Okay. So what I would say is that there's some familiarity with that. So if you grew up, let's say as a guy watching your mom, you have certain ideas about how women behave, about how women interact with people, about how women interact with you. And those are sort of wired in because of the way that you grew up. And so you may gravitate toward that because it's familiar. I think people often say, oh, my dad was terrible. I never want to marry anyone like my dad. And who do they end up marrying? Someone like their dad. So I would say there is some truth to that. You can make a conscious effort to get away from it, but there will always be some traits that you're drawn to because they're familiar to you.
I mean, in that sense, yes. Then I did had that kind of experience because you always tend to find somebody who cares about you rather than only expecting you to care about them.
Yep.
That's a motherly quality right there. I expect because that's what my mom does.
For sure.
Constantly looking after me despite of whatever I'm doing, me being communicative, non-communicative, whatever it is. She's still constantly every day asking me, "You need for right?" And the concern in her voice itself, that's something I do in, when it comes to serial dating.
Yeah.
Pardon. And that does explain a lot. So if we have to mark a segment here, so we are basically, let's say, till now we have spoken a point of a person's life where they're trying to find out a person. And now let's say, for instance, somebody has found someone. Now they're dating.
Okay. Yeah.
I would love to know how to keep it healthy and what are the markers in the overall psychology.
Yeah, we're going to need a lot more time to go through all of that. So there are some basic things that are really important. Number one, continuing to make sure that you're emotionally solid and stable as a person, then you're going to bring that solidity into your relationship. The second thing is being willing and able to communicate directly with someone. So, for example, if we were dating and we got into a fight and I got up and slammed the door and walked out, there's not a lot that we can do with that. But if I said, hey, I feel really angry that you did that thing, and you said, oh, I didn't realize that made you angry, I'll be mindful of that next time, then we're done and we go on and have a good relationship. So thinking about the way that you identify, oh, I feel mad right now, I'm going to tell this person I'm mad, as opposed to acting it out behaviorally. So
ignoring them, trying to
silent treatment, or pretending everything's fine when it's not fine, and then you end up exploding later. So
the baggage.
Yeah. So I would say in a nutshell, that piece is about separating feelings from behaviors. All of your feelings are perfectly okay. All of your behaviors are not okay.
Yes.
And so you get to feel however you want to feel, but you don't get to act that out because that's going to impact the other person. So just having some awareness about that is one of the things that.
So you factor the ideology of communication being the biggest key factor.
Yeah.
In relationship.
Yes.
Success or
100%.
Any tips how to communicate efficiently?
Being really direct. So knowing yourself first and being able to communicate very directly with the other person. So not dropping hints about things, for example. Like if I want to go to dinner with you on Friday, I don't say, I wonder what new restaurants are open this Friday. I say, hey, I'd love to go to dinner with you on Friday.
I'm having live diagnosis. Because these are things that often we suffer from, right? What happens is, especially me, I don't know if this is slowly turning to my own therapy session. I'm just expecting that not to be.
I'll send you a bill.
Because what happens is, every once in a while, call this being, there's a person from the army, his name is, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure if you know him. His name is Naval Vikram. So he's a person from my country.
Okay.
This man have once taken up philosophy, calling it as being alive.
Okay.
Which means you're every day, you're pretty normal, you're chill with your life, you spend time with family, you sit down and eat. Every once in a while, you get obsessed with something. And you're obsessed with something so much, just like a lion, that it's hungry, it gets obsessed with the prey. It runs behind it as much as it can and harms it. But as a man, you get obsessed with something for a few months, you make it happen. Then you come back being again sluggish and normal. I have that kind of. What happens with me in relationships often is that if the other person is trying to leave things, they are never sitting in me. I am just over there thinking, maybe this is open, just check it out. That's it. And then you think of what was being there. So that is honestly something that I do understand. And as you said, being communicative, that is being the key. I want to actually ask you a couple of questions. So, one, how do you see couples? I'm sure you must have seen them. That so the guy doesn't praise me enough, or the girl, the guy being she doesn't appreciate my efforts. Where do you think these things come from, and how to solve them? Like how to avoid these kind of conflicts?
So, have you ever heard of the expression that says rising tides raise all boats? So the idea is if my partner's happy, guess what? That's going to make me happier. And so if you go into it with that philosophy, I mean, it takes both people because if one person's doing that, that's going to be terrible. But if you said, gosh, my partner doesn't appreciate me enough, why wouldn't your partner want to appreciate you more? Like that doesn't take any effort to just be like, hey, thanks for unloading the dishwasher or, thanks for mowing the grass or whatever the thing you did, just feeling more appreciated. And then if your partner wants more compliments, why wouldn't you say, hey, you look great today? That's so easy. And both people are happier and then the relationship's more compatible. But what happens is people get so focused on themselves and like being selfish, like, well, you didn't compliment me, so I'm not going to make you feel appreciated. So somebody has to be the one to take the first step and the other person has to respond in kind. And then the relationship works really well.
And what do you again? I don't know if this. I might. I'm not exactly sure where this is heading, but what do you think about narcissistic people in a relationship who are very self-obsessed with the ideology of the universe revolves around them.
Yep.
Because this happens a lot. So they want you to be obsessed with them. They want you to be, they want your life being centered around them. And I'm pretty sure this does negatively affect a relationship. And that's one sure our experience with these kind of relationship.
Yes. So the word narcissist or narcissism gets thrown around a lot. It's actually a clinical diagnosis that most people that get labeled as a narcissist by social media are just selfish people.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily they don't necessarily have a mental health diagnosis. Selfishness makes a relationship hard. So what I would say is if you meet someone and their universe, they need your universe to revolve around them, it's probably not going to be a compatible relationship. So you might as well let it go right now. You usually see those things right up front.
No, that's wrong. Yes, I oftentimes it's like an onion.
Uh-huh.
As it uncovers, you start eating.
Yes.
See, that's the most simplistic explained it.
But if you look back and you can let me know how this works for you. When you look back, you realize I actually had all the information at layer one,
It's true.
but I just needed to peel back a few layers to confirm.
So basically, it's as I said, it's like you still hang on there to figure out that is this. You don't really pick up this because initially you are focusing on the idea. Oh shit, she said I look good,
And look how pretty she is.
and it matters the most. And you will forget everything.
Yes.
Who it comes.
You're like,
Okay, this is what
yep.
it is. And you're like,
Oh, yeah. Remember on the first date when everything was about her? Like, oh, yeah. Uh huh.
so you're actually that does make really sense. And so this is one conflict, right? There will be various categories of that.
Mhm.
You know, uh, I'm talking from the perspective of a 22-year-old. There will be maybe 30s or 40 or 50-year-old people who are watching this, and they also have conflicts. So how to avoid conflict or how to deal with the conflict?
Mhm.
I want both these things.
Every relationship's going to have conflict.
So
You're never going to get along with someone 100% of the time. So the question is, how does this person deal with conflict? Most of the time, at least in our culture, we get taught to do one of two things. We cut the person off, like, I had conflict with you, I'm done. Or we sweep it under the rug and we pretend like the conflict never happened.
yeah,
And it starts to build up and build up. And then eventually there's some explosive event, usually. So I don't know about avoiding conflict, but the way to deal with conflict is to talk about your feelings up front and to say them right when they happen and then let it go and move on. Because if you're holding on to something and stewing about it, it's going to impact how you're treating your partner and it's not going to go very well.
and honestly, that is really true because conflicts are something that are packaged in a relationship because if two people are in a room, absolutely, even you and me, if we spend more than 24 hours in the same room sitting and talking, there will be opinions that we both don't agree on.
Yep.
So if you and me have the same opinion right now sitting here, one of us is unnecessary.
Yeah.
So I don't have to be here because either the ways you are having the same opinion. Hence, we will be contradicting. So
Yes.
when we deal with them is something that makes very big difference in a relationship. And I want to call this, oftentimes in my multiple relationships, what happens is they come from the background where things are not as like must have seen their parents or the environment they grew up in.
Yeah.
Having the conflicts there in a different way.
Yes.
Somebody screams.
Yep.
Like, well, being honest, my voice gets loud. In any conflict, if we start arguing, it doesn't have to be a relationship anywhere.
Yeah.
My voice gets loud.
Yeah.
Being as a person who talks in itself louder, and my voice gets more bass when I talk in a conflict.
Yep.
And somebody might be crying. Somebody might be hitting the other person. Somebody might be doing self-harm. So how deal with these things?
Yeah. So let's play that through. So you're someone who might get loud in a conflict. So if you and I were having a conflict and I said, hey, when you speak loudly, it starts to feel scary to me. So would you mind speaking a little more softly? What would happen?
Makes a difference, yes.
Would you do it?
No.
You wouldn't lower your voice if I said that? Oh, so you're like, no.
No.
No, I would not.
I would lower my voice. I mean, obviously, the point is the other person is trying to make you realize something rather than increasing the intensity.
Yeah. So if I said, stop yelling at me, then you probably would keep yelling.
Yes.
But if I identify what's happening for me and I communicate it to you in a direct way, it lessens the tension.
And overall, I always feel, what do you think there's a fun factor in a relationship? Uh, you know, something I always feel is basically people go remember whatever you tell them, despite in a conflict, any time of your life.
Yep.
Even though you moved on through the conflict, they still remember what you have said to them. So you call somebody something or you make a statement about them at some conflict, they still remember it all through their life.
Especially if it was something really hurtful. Yes.
Absolutely. And that's often the case because you both know the vulnerable sides of each other being in a relationship.
Yes.
So you want to be talking in a certain manner
Yeah.
because you want to hurt the other person. And moving forward, this will of course sit in somebody's head and it will be the cause of serial fights because at every point of time when there's a new conflict there, the other person gets triggered because at some point of time we said this.
Yeah.
Moving on from that.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that's the question I have. That is in the whole set. So what do you call moving on from conflict? Is forgetting everything or making sure you're talking only to the point of conflict and not hurting each other?
You said something that I think is really interesting. You said because when you get mad, you want to hurt the other person. So that's work to do on yourself so that I can get really, really mad at you, but I don't want to hurt you. So that's the difference because you remember this concept of rising tides raise all boats.
Yeah.
If I say something hurtful to you, like if we're partners and we're a team and I just hurt my own teammate, which isn't helpful, right? But our whole team's going to lose if one of our players gets hurt. And so that's work to do on yourself so that when you get mad, your goal isn't to hurt the other person. Your goal is to just express the fact that you're mad.
And dealing with the relationship in its whole itself. So, wanna know even this. In a relationship, let's say if I turn 26, 27, and I am now into a phase of life where I want to get married or date somebody for long term, get married, and then run the relationship all through to the end of my life.
Okay.
In the meantime, it's obviously known that every once in a while a person changes through the experiences, to the work culture, or to the new setting that he's trying to fit in.
Yeah.
Now, it's the often thing that you hear in a relationship. He used to do this, or she used to be this person.
Yep.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
And in this kind of settings, also want to know through the extension of this, this being the question one. After that, what happens is this is the direct extension to divorces or breakups. Where do you see with the incline rise right now? Where do you see relationships failing the most?
Wow, that's a big question. I want to address what you were saying about people change and grow. Of course, if you get together with someone when you're 26 or 27, by the time you're 50, you're going to be two very different people. So the core of who you are is still the core of who you are, but your interest may be like you used to play basketball and now you like tennis or something like that.
Yeah.
So what happens, this is what I see most often, is that couples go through phases where they're kind of growing apart and then they come back and they grow together and then they grow apart. So you're kind of constantly in this wave cycle. What happens is people leave when they're here because they say we're growing apart. It's like, you are, but give it a minute and you'll start growing back together again most of the time.
It's really nice way of explaining the cycle of relationships.
Yeah. So it's like, don't leave when you're here because you're about to round a corner and you're about to come back together.
No, it's really sad we are living in an age where one conflict or one diverse you get directly make one of the person or both of them
Yeah.
get interested in somebody else and just leave them here, move forward with life.
Yep.
But that makes a difference because ultimately with the new person itself, you're still going to be ending up in the same place.
Yep. It's true. I believe that you get teachers you hire teachers for yourself throughout your life. And if you fire that teacher, guess what? You're going to hire yourself a new one to teach you the same lessons. And I also want to be clear that there are certain things that should not be tolerated. If you're being physically abused in a relationship, you don't stay and wait for that to come back around. This might be a little controversial, but my belief is if you're in a relationship with someone who is actively addicted to a substance and not taking steps to change that, that's going to be a hard relationship to stay in. So there are certain things.
Substances such as drugs and
Like if you're with someone who's a drug addict or even an alcoholic, then that's going to be a hard person to stay in a compatible relationship with over time. If someone's physically abusing you. So there are a few things that I would say that's probably not one that you want to stick out for the rest of your life because you're going to be unhappy. But if you're with someone like, I don't know, who is messy and you're neat, does that really need to end the relationship? I mean, yeah.
So as coming jump into the next question, I mean the second question I have mentioned,
Mhm.
whether it's divorces
Mhm.
or breakups.
Yep.
Well, divorce, I don't know if right now in the American statistics, but Indian statistics, it's on peak rise.
Really?
It's going heavy. We are hearing one of these news every month.
What do you think's changing in India?
I often so lately what's happening in India is basically the introduction to this culture of dating, hookups, and the whole online dating scene. It's not so. There used to be a time where meeting another person in a setting. So let's say, I'll give an example. So I came to shoot podcast right now here. So I would not be interested in the thought in my head itself. Okay, if I'm meeting somebody today, so I look at them in a perspective of data.
Mhm.
So I might find a match today, right now where I'm sitting there to do a podcast.
Okay.
It's not often.
Yeah.
But with your mobile phone in hand, anybody you follow on your Instagram, anybody that you're talking on your WhatsApp, anybody on your iMessage gets into that zone because you're not sitting across the table with them. So you might leave a message and just forget that it happened.
Yep.
So the other person will now reply to it, and if it's a positive reply, you go anywhere. With that being in the action, what's happening right now is couples who are at some point of divergence, they're unhappy in a relationship.
Yeah.
One of them will find somebody like this.
Mhm.
And what's happening right now is the alimony cases where the girl wants to marry somebody actually. The parents didn't allow her to do that. It happens in India.
Yeah.
The typical brown parenting issues where they prefer a certain privileged marriage rather than the choice of marriage being authentic. So that causes what is the girl wants to marry somebody. And so she waits for a certain period of time until, and what she does is she files domestic violence case in a court, gets alimony, and settles with the person that she actually wants to marry.
Oh, interesting.
So that is being a very scary part right now.
Okay.
Anybody?
Yeah.
So recently there's a whole case that is going on. And on the other hand, men being people in itself, they grow in the households where they are often then not have heard or not got the exact privilege or attention from the family that they come from, which is often again brought in. It's I'm not going to be stating complete facts about the fact everybody knows it. It's basically what happens to working class parents. They come from working class. So they want the kid to be happy financially. So there's a label there. Kid is happy or financially. So he gets maybe buying the ability to buy branded clothes, drive a Mercedes, get an Xbox or a kid or whatever it is. Emotionally, the kid has nobody to talk. Yeah. So eventually, such kind of people, what happens is when they get into marriage, they tend to not adjust. And that causes a big factor because you are talking to somebody who's equally grown in another family with a different upbringing. You're trying to make a match. So it gets harder that if she says that maybe we have to change this and you're stubborn on the fact of not doing it, it goes nowhere. So these two being rising humongously because everybody wants to be rich. One part where the guy is being troubled, girl being having too many options. Because there was a time in India where social media was not as prevalent as it is, and these dating apps are not as prevalent as they were. So people never understood what is the actual attention woman wants. So the woman had options of 8 to 10 men that she knows as friends. And in which, of course, one or two of them are trying for her. So the rest of them obviously move on the scene. So it comes to or narrows down to the path of two people. Now, if she's on a Tinder app or a Bumble app, 8 lakh people are across the state are interested in meeting. So now she knows she in her head is a bigger person. So for her, if this is my value, my worth, and that causes a problem.
That's interesting.
This is what I have read yesterday. That I was going through what is the reason behind the whole dating apps being big prime cause, and the research says that girl looking at the numbers and thinking, well, that's the value of attractiveness. So the score had changed. So according to guy, they don't have it anyway. So of course for them, it's like it's their thought process. But the girl thinks about the number that she sees in the app as likes and adjusts her expectation
Accordingly.
accordingly.
That makes sense.
Okay, the person who comes or date her in a longer relationship should have to compete this 1,000, 10,000 or 1 lakh or 100K men who are liking her on these apps. Because they are interested, of course. So the first message itself would not be a. It would, of course, be your eyes are pretty or you are the most beautiful angel I've seen on this planet. And now the man who was dating her for the last 5 years would not say this every month.
And so she's so enamored with this guy.
And she's now addicted to the fact that people outside in the world talk to her like this. To what? That's the new standard, right? That the mad guy has to compete on.
I like it.
So that is, and so I want to know, with the growing divorces across the globe, and breakups are very common. It's like, it's like having coffee in the morning. So tonight they might be in a relationship, tomorrow morning they just casually say, we just broke up. Why do you think what are the prime factors in your therapy or relationship with couples? What do you think is the prime contributor to these kind of these breakups and divorces? Because you don't. I don't think so. Somebody would be interested in the fact of spending their emotions so cheaply. So I want to know why do people prefer breakups rather than changing or putting in effort to change?
That's a really good question, and I'm going to answer with my opinion. So this is not based on research or facts. This is just what I
And it used to these kind of things would of course be opinions because everybody is looking for something that they in their own fashion. I don't think there exist any facts.
So we were talking about earlier about pendulum swings, how things are one way and then it swings opposite. So if you think about sort of the baby boomer generation, their whole mantra was hard work, and it's a daily grind, and so they got socialized to believe that it's a virtue to work really hard. So more of those people's marriages lasted because it's like even when it gets hard, I'm socialized to stick it out. As time has gone on, if you look at today, you said you're 22.
Yes.
So people in your generation, your parents did things that I like to call snowplow parenting. So the parents went ahead of you and clear, maybe not you specifically, but in this generation, they go ahead and clear the path so that their kid doesn't have to face anything hard. So your generation grew up like, well, I don't want to do anything that's hard. And so the minute that people get in a fight with their partner, they're like, well, I'm not doing this. I'm out of here. Rather than saying like, okay, it was a fight. It's fine. We're going to stick it out. We're going to figure this out. And I see it with jobs too. It's a very similar thing that people, you don't get unlimited vacation, so you quit your job. Oh, okay. So part of that is just getting socialized to be able to face adversity. Every single relationship you have is going to have some kind of adversity. And if you leave as soon as it gets hard, you're going to be having a lot of relationships because every one of them is going to get hard. So,
I mean, since you have mentioned this thing before, now lately it's a thing.
also,
People have competitions and body counts.
really?
Yes.
Yeah. Meaning sexually or just relationships?
Same.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's been a thing for a long time, but more so.
It's a big, it's a flex for especially guys. It's a flex that if there's a reference range in the group, the highest one gets the respect. But okay, wow. Kind of thing.
Yes.
And even now, the part is I see women being very active about the ideology of explaining the fact that, okay, this is the amount of relationships I've been in. She prefers it to be very less. While as guys, I don't call them relationships. There's no point of
Right.
it. Might be in their head. I don't trust that. I know
Yeah.
what's happening there. So it's mostly body count, and they prefer it to be higher.
Yeah.
So I think that's also another contribution where you're constantly focusing on some unrealistic world which doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, and if I settle down with her, then think of all the numbers that I'm losing.
So it's like, okay, tomorrow morning, if I sit in a friends group and I say, okay, wait, this is the thing I'm stuck here. And there's some other guy who comes, actually, you know what, I've been on a date with this girl, she's this, she's that. So this causes a man to think, okay, wait, maybe I am settling for something less.
Yeah.
And that's enough to end a relationship.
Yeah. Well, and part of what you're talking about too is the paradox of choice.
Yes.
That I spent some time living in Mexico, and there was a little store across from my house. And if I wanted cereal, for example, I had 3 choices.
No.
And so what's the best one of those 3 cereals? I'll take it. If you go to H-E-B, our big grocery store here, there are 400 cereals.
Yeah.
And so if I don't like one, I'll just get a different one. It's fine. So I could burn through my choices in Mexico really quickly because if I didn't like one, I only had 2 other options.
Yes.
And I think that's true. If you think about dating, let's say you lived in a small village 100 years ago, there are probably 5 people that you might date from that village that aren't your siblings or something. And so, they're going to be happy with one of those 5 people. But if you're,
or at least you adjust.
Yeah, you adjust. You're going to be satisfied, I guess I should say, with one of those 5 people. But if you are on Bumble and you go on a date and you're like, she's pretty good, but there's 1,000 others that might be better, then you're constantly in that state of seeking something better.
Yeah, I know people, to give some context for you, I know so many people who, I don't know, but let's say, and they meet, let's say they met a girl, and they know it might go a bit further. So what they do is they immediately meet a couple of other girls or 3 or 4 of them in subsequent days before this gets far.
Yeah.
So they can have that, whatever
The choice.
whatever the stuff that was going on, their Bumble activity, like they just wipe.
Yeah.
It's basically like, so if they're talking to 4 girls, they met one and then they felt it might the click. So they don't want to lose the other 3.
Yeah.
This kind of mentality has to die at some point.
Yeah. It's not sustainable, of course. It's not working. It's not making people happy.
Unless you don't want to get married all in your life and just leave. That might be a good solution too.
That's true.
And before we end the emotional level for relationship discussion, I would like to ask you, give maybe, I don't know, maybe 5 red flags in a relationship that you have to watch out for at any point. And that should be a big prime factor for you to decide if you have to leave right now. or maybe this is ending. So what are the five red flags that you would say in a relationship that support the idea that this is ending?
So, off the top of my head, I would say the first thing that you would look for would be emotional instability of some sort. So, that might mean somebody has a bad temper. So, you're on a first date and they scream at the waiter, or you say something to them and they start to cry right away. Things like that that would indicate some level of instability in their emotions. So, you should look for that right away because that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it makes a relationship very hard. When someone is emotionally unstable, it makes things very hard. I would also look for reciprocity. So if we go on a date and I'm only talking about myself, you mentioned the word narcissist.
Yes.
If it's all about me, where do I want to go to dinner? And let's talk about me. Do you think I look good? That's a red flag too, that someone's not going to be that interested in you. I would say looking at people's kindness toward other people. That like if someone is rude to someone else when you're standing in line for a movie, or if someone is rude to the waiter, that those are things that tend to not be situation specific. Like you're probably going to be on the receiving end of those at some point. Let's see. Again, going back to substance, if you're on a first date with someone and they pound down 8 drinks, that might be something to pay attention to.
That would be something I mean, if I had that situation, I would be silent drink as a person, never have alcohol or any substance. I am more as a person, I'm very caffeine addicted. So I drink coffee or energy drinks.
Okay.
If I'm standing in a position where I am seeing somebody that just take sips of vodka or 8 shots now in a snacks, I guess I have to escape. There's no way standing there because it's not going to work anyway. Because now she has no clue what she's talking after a point. She's just blabbering.
Yep.
And that makes it gibberish.
Yep. Yes. And if somebody has a drink, they're not going to be impaired after that drink. And if they have a drink and
I think drinking it, of course, it's different from drinking it a maniac.
Right. So just looking for any signs of excess like that, I would say. So those would probably be the top red flags that I would look for.
And any specific green flags for both men and women?
So if you think about the opposite of those things, I would say kindness, reciprocity, someone who's interested in you and also brings interesting things to talk about. Someone who seems emotionally even or stable.
Yes.
Someone who does things in moderation more. Not doing things to excess. So yeah, just the green flags are kind of whatever the opposite of the red flags are.
Since we spoke about, I always categorize, I mean, apart from the finance and other abilities in a relationship, there are 2 phases of a relationship that are very predominant.
Okay.
One is emotional. Well, then the other one is sexual. What role do you think sex plays in a relationship?
I think for some people it's very important.
Yeah.
And it's at the top of their list. And for other people, it's not. So mixed drive is the most common sexual issue that people bring to therapy. So one person has a higher sex drive than the other. One person wants sex more often than the other is the most common sexual issue that people bring to therapy.
And what is the solution for it?
Yeah. So that's a really great question because you're almost never going to be exactly compatible. And there's
this high.
Yeah. And there's a trend, like I think some people are just wired to be more sexual than others. And when you first meet someone and the attraction is really high, the chemistry is really high, you're going to have a lot of sex. And then most often that falls off, right? And so then you start to see what someone's actual sex drive really is. And so the general rule of thumb, I mean, and this is also different for men than women, because if you don't feel sexual, you can't have sex, right?
Yes.
Because physiologically, if you're not turned on, it's not going to happen. That's not necessarily true for women. And so
is the problem. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So women can say yes to sex even when they don't want to say yes to sex. And I think that starts to cause a different set of problems.
Yeah.
So
they can pretend to be interested.
Yep.
Because there are very less cues that can contribute to the idea that they are not turned on.
Yes.
It's unlike a guy.
Yep.
And it does cause what kind of issues that would cause if you don't really.
So when women say yes to sex when they don't want to say yes to sex, it creates a vulnerability and which often leads to resentment. And so it takes a toll on the emotional aspect of the relationship as well. And so typically what I would say, and surprisingly, it's probably about 40% of the time, the woman is the person with the higher sex drive. So
Okay.
yeah, so I see a lot of couples where the woman wants more sex than the man. So it's kind of a myth that men are always the ones that want more sex. That's not necessarily true.
I mean, yeah, that's not necessarily true. Then what I personally feel is oftentimes when it comes to the whole thing of this, as I also feel with social media this big role
Mhm.
with all these things and the stuff that are always across the web that gets viral on what I was. It's mostly men watching them.
Yeah.
And mostly it's regarding men as well.
Mhm.
That if I can actually prove this. You can if just go and Google something.
Yep.
You can Google how to be good in bed.
Mhm.
And if there exist 20 websites, all of them are about men.
Yep.
It's not a man's job. It's two people that are involved in that. It's not one person performing. Yeah. And that in itself shows the ideology of how a person, like a guy, is constantly under the stress that is she like, or is she having the climax or whatever? Is she having the pleasure if she
Yeah.
gets there? And that constantly makes them make it big in their head and eventually think as it's think, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. And,
So think about this. If I say the word to you sexual performance, who am I talking about?
I would say men.
Absolutely. So men, think about the word. You're performing.
Yeah.
Like that's so much pressure. Women don't think about sexual performance. That's why we're not Googling that.
Exactly.
Because no one tells women you have to perform sexually. So this is an idea that men have. And then it creates anxiety because if, God forbid, you don't perform well, then
You're not a weaker man.
yeah. And
Yeah.
guess what happens next time? You're going to get anxious. And guess what happens when you get anxious? You're not going to perform very well. So it becomes this vicious cycle. It's really interesting. Men are starting to take performance enhancing drugs in their 30s now. Like this used to be a thing for like older men.
You know, I shared a podcast with fitness influencer before this, which was second episode.
Yeah.
It was just about, I mentioned that so there's something that pre-workout used to hold. People take it as a before the workouts to enhance their performance in the workout.
Yep.
You know, people abuse that before sex.
Oh, interesting.
Basically, what happens is I'll explain what it does. So it pumps blood to the parts where you're working out, and you feel less pain, or you feel less sensation.
Okay.
Your mind numbs the area out there. Hence, if you do the same thing, you're in a sexual activity. Of course, your blood is pumping into your parts that you're using.
Yep.
And you're feeling less sensation. So it creates the whole ideology there that you perform well, but ultimately people men forget the fact that it's an act that they also have to enjoy. It's
Right.
not like you're doing it.
So if you're numb, then you're not going to enjoy it that much either.
You're just involved in it as if it's duty.
Yes.
It won't make any. It
No.
won't get better. Even.
No, absolutely not.
And there's another thing that when you said performance anxiety thing, male ego is very fragile.
Say that again.
Male ego is very fragile.
Yeah.
It's very, very fragile.
Especially when it comes to sex and when it comes to money. Women don't get socialized like that. If men can't, if you have erectile dysfunction, like there's so much shame attached to that. If women don't feel sexual, we don't get socialized to feel shame about it.
And the other part is, honestly, as I said about the male ego thing, most of the people such as erectile dysfunction, 6 out of 10 men who think they have ED don't have ED. They just think it because it's.
And so then it becomes true though, because then it's your brain.
Anxiety. And they feel it's true.
Yep.
And the whole thing of
true.
size matters, etc., etc., etc. Every question that comes, why does Anybody who's trying to sell something that is not gender is always tied to insecurity.
Absolutely.
Because
Yes.
airtel is not genderless. It's not same for every guy.
Yeah.
It comes from different factors.
Yeah, perfect.
Medication is different. And the same thing as anxiety, stress,
Yes.
and same thing as performance, how you drive.
Yep.
They're all personal to each man.
Yes.
And if somebody's setting something or online for targeting these things, it's targeting your insecurity.
Absolutely. And it's a huge insecurity for men. Just like there are so many weight loss products targeted to women because weight is a huge insecurity for women. Yeah. It's such a
And moreover, the whole ideology of being fragile is they want to hear that at the end that, oh, you did well.
yes.
And it's not about the whole thing is for them. Even honestly, I cannot tell you this as well. Everybody, I can guarantee this. You can ask any woman, my being public. Let's say you don't finish as a man in bed at all.
Yep.
And stop it after a point and ask her how she feels. She'll, of course, ask you that. Am I not attractive that you're not feeling it also?
Yep.
It's going to be a question.
Yep.
So, how do you think they're not worried? They are equally worried. But the point is, it's not the first thought in their head.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. If the man has erectile dysfunction or something goes wrong or he doesn't finish, of course women think. The other thing that I kind of related to this, and I'm going down a little trail that you can cut this out if you want, but that women think that if the guy they're dating watches porn, that it's something about them. That, oh, he doesn't find me attractive enough, so he has to watch porn. And it's like,
You say, I've been there before.
your mom might be watching this.
The only reason why I say I don't want to be there.
You, but someone else. Yeah.
Asking for a friend, mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what do you think about the whole scene of this?
I think it has nothing to do with how attractive your partner is. I think that men are typically visually stimulated. And so watching porn is something that's very stimulating to them. They might have the hottest partner ever and they're still going to want to watch porn.
So it's like I have one more question. You know, self help when it comes to the whole idea of sexually, like, masturbating or
Yep.
whether it's male or female. Space. Do you think it's forbidden in a relationship that if somebody masturbates? Let's say?
I think it depends on your partner. So I think masturbation can be a healthy part of a person's sex life. And often it makes their partner insecure.
Yes.
So I would say that is more of an emotional issue. That is something that they should talk about rather than that just being some kind of deal breaker. Because why would that bother you if your partner did that?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go a little off topic.
Okay.
It's going to be it's going to be a little scientific.
Okay.
Here.
Sure.
And it would be really interesting if somebody, I heard that you would love to share the podcast as clips, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So this would be good. There's a saying in a scientific research where somebody has stated a woman on birth control. So basically, women have this capability of smelling the partner and saying, can she produce healthy kids?
Oh, interesting.
And girl, woman, on birth control can't do that. So hence the choice. So basically, people, it's not about producing and making kids directly. It's the guy who, for them, again, it's not that you use perfume from tomorrow morning. Please understand. It's your body odor. It's the way you
Sure. Your inherent smell.
sense. A woman can smell you and tell that if this is the person that I can be compatible with or not. It happens in animal kingdom as well. That they smell each other and they figure out. Yeah, we have the ability. It's just we don't. We subconsciously use it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's the reason why sometimes when we shake hands with somebody or give a hug to somebody, we unknowingly feel attracted to them. It's when we never confident.
Yep.
It's because of the fact that the smell that we picked up from them is something that we inherently feel that this is the person that we can be compatible with. And a lot of the women on birth control can't do that.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. It's funny that you brought that up because when I was in my doc program, it was the thing I wanted to write my dissertation about was the fact that we are attracted to someone's smell. It turned out that the scientific aspect of it was more research than I was willing to do. Because mine was more of a therapeutic concentration and not a scientific concentration. Yeah.
Regarding this part, and it is true that girl and a male partner. Anybody can pick up by the smell.
Yep.
And that makes, and oftentimes you call this 10, 8, 7, 6 numbers.
Yeah.
They change dramatically when they smell the person.
Yep.
Because, so they have an experiment where they bring eight women and 18 men.
Okay.
What they do is they exchange pictures of each other. And they ask them to rank them. And then they give a piece of cloth that has the order of the person.
Yes.
And the ranking is dramatically different.
Interesting.
Sometimes rank low is now ranked high because of the voice. Because the girl feels this person is more compatible with me.
That's very interesting.
That gets back to what you said, that a girl is not always interested in a guy who's perfectly.
Yeah.
Because and surprisingly, girl and birth control can't do that.
I didn't know that, but it would make sense. I guess if her fertility was suppressed, then yeah.
It's not, it suppresses. So she's initially up to do that. Hence, it causes her to engage in relationships that will not lead to.
Very interesting.
Which means,
you're talking about hormonal birth control?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I suppose I'm not very into the ideology of how exactly the precautions or methodologies of birth control.
Yeah.
But there is one set of birth control that if a woman is on, it's highly unlikely that it's not possible that she can smell somebody and say this is a good partner or not.
That's
Hence, she engages in relationships that might be visually appealing, attention seeking, or etc. 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 And they'll not last long because she never understood him biologically first.
Yeah.
So that's also something plays a factor in relationship. Have you ever encountered this whole scene? Because I was really interested to know if people actually like with birth control have this kind of issue.
Yeah, I've never heard that before, but like I said, it makes perfect sense. But I definitely know that people are drawn to or repelled by someone's inherent smell, not by the products that they use or the cologne that they wear or something, but literally by how they smell.
And
yeah,
even this, just because you said this, let's say down the lane 6 years or 10 years from today, and you become a really known person on social media. Maybe you have like 10 million followers. You said this in my podcast. Somebody will cut this clip and he'll put advertisement of a cologne next to it saying, so use this cologne to be more attractive. That's the problem. Like, people are always finding different ways to call themselves more attractive rather than being their true selves.
Yes.
Which may work. Absolutely.
So I'm glad that you said that, because that in a nutshell sums up my belief in what we're doing at Get Dateable, which is if you work on becoming your most authentic, most attractive self, then you're going to attract the partner who's the best match for you.
Yes.
Because if you're trying to be someone you're not, if you're trying to smell like something you're not, you're going to attract someone who's not your ideal partner. So authenticity is really the key in the most successful relationships.
And you said you have to communicate, whether it is before, so putting up the relationship aside, let's say that they want to find a match.
Okay.
How often should they communicate?
There's not an exact answer to that, but what I would say is don't do something because you think you should do it or you shouldn't do it. So again, going back to authenticity.
Yes.
If you think I should text this person every day, but I don't really have anything to say, that's the wrong idea. Or if you think, well, I really wanted to reach out, but I shouldn't text her because I just texted her yesterday, also not okay. If you have something genuine to say or a reason that you want to reach out, then do it. It doesn't matter if it's...
You know, when you said that, there's this thing, I don't know if you can, maybe when you go back home, you speak to your daughter. You said you have...
I have a daughter.
It's just, double texting is a thing.
Yes, I know that.
Say that you can't double text.
It's ridiculous.
I don't know.
To a point. So what I will say about that is you're looking for reciprocity. So if I texted you this morning and now something happened and I'm like, oh, I need to text him again, great. But if I text you 4 times and you don't text me back, then there's no reciprocity there.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to keep going because obviously you're overdoing it. So pay attention to social cues that the person is exhibiting. So don't think, well, I texted last, so I can't text again. It's like, no, that's ridiculous.
That is something that I also trust. It's not, I have a lot to talk everywhere I go. A lot of my people have complaints that this guy never be quiet. I'm either listening, I'm always in a conversation. You put me in a room, I'm always in a conversation.
Yeah.
No matter where I am.
Yes.
That makes me interesting to some and overwhelming to some. which I can understand.
And so the person who's your ideal match is going to be one of those people who finds that interesting. Like, hey, I like this guy.
I feel like you asked it at the end. Since you had it, I'll ask that question. It didn't. And moving to the question of, so let's say that's for sure, communication being the key all there.
Yes.
We have spoken about how often we should communicate. And just few key tips while the relationship is growing. And like from there, whenever they started to the end of the relationship, till they, however long they want it to last.
Yep.
What are the few habits and what are few steps they have to take care of to make the relationship being healthier and blossom perfectly?
So I can tell you this based on research. There's a couples researcher named John Gottman who has studied thousands and thousands of couples over the years. And his research boils down to two specific things: kindness and generosity. So if you exhibit those two qualities, there's a really good chance that your relationship's going to succeed. If you and your partner both exhibit those two things, that long-term couples embody those two principles. So kindness doesn't mean we're never going to have conflict, but it means in the middle of the conflict, I'm not saying those mean things to you. I'm not hitting you below the belt. I'm telling you how I feel about something. And generosity means that I don't say, I guess you can go play poker with your friends. I say, hey, go play poker with your friends. Have a great time. I can't wait to hear about it when you get back. So it's being generous with them as opposed to like withholding or contemptuous. Yeah.
And what like something here? What do you think about expectation being? You will have relationships where people expect certain things. Sometimes they're too much. Like I can explain in a very similar ways. People will explain you. People will expect you
Mhm.
and everything. So let's say if you have somebody else, well,
Mhm.
and yeah, he of course have friends.
Mhm.
The conversations he have with his girlfriend are different from the what he has
Yeah,
with friends.
of course.
Sometimes we'll find people, both man and woman, but I have given example as girlfriend, that you will find somebody who wants every conversation that the man ever has
Mhm.
to be with her.
So what you would say is, oh, I hear that that's your expectation. That's not going to happen with me. So maybe we're not a good fit for each other.
Yeah.
You just clarify right up front. Like if I say, hey, I would like you to cook my dinner every night and then wash the dishes after we eat, I can expect that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
And that would not be a possibility because
so you're going to say, hey, Sarah, I hear that you expect that. That's not the kind of guy I am. So we're probably not a good match for each other. And I'd be like, oh, okay.
so the expect, you know, it would have been the answer as maybe you need a maid.
Exactly. Yep. So the key to expectations is clarifying with the other person, like, oh, I expect you to be home by 7 o'clock at night. And you say, oh, sure, I'll be home at 7. Or, oh, hey, I have to work till 8 every night, so I'm not going to be home at 7. So it's just communicating about those expectations.
What I wanted to like it, that I wanted you to tell it. It's the communication no matter which part of the
Yes.
relationship you are in.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, until so there is a saying in the language.
Also,
They say if you don't tell you're hungry, even mom can't feed you.
yes, I like that.
She gave birth to me. You
Mhm.
can't eat. She's the woman that literally like from her I came.
Yeah.
Despite of that being a fact, she can't figure out if I'm hungry or not.
Yeah.
How can a woman who's like after 30 years or 25 years of my life, who entered my life, would I know everything about it?
Yeah.
So I have to open my mouth, explain.
Sure.
And one more thing that you have mentioned that I really like is conflict should never have parts in which you are insulting each other. Discussing conflict is different from disgusting each other.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
calling the other person for things
Yeah.
that is not that has nothing to do with the conflict.
Yep.
So it's you having we both have a conflict and
Yep.
we should talk about the conflict. Rather you saying that yeah, it's because of you come from different country or etc. 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 It makes it won't solve the matter.
No.
It would rather let keeping the discussion or conversation who the topic
Yeah.
make much benefit.
Yes.
On that note, I want to ask you one question which is very personal. I might not keep it if it's there, you're just after knowing this information. So according to Get Datable Science,
Mhm.
on a scale, what are with the discussion we had, and you must have known now, you know the modus operandi of who I am.
Mhm.
So how much do you think that I am using that science database?
Well, it sounds like you're using it very well. So it sounds like you're interested in communicating, that you're interested in not insulting the other person, that you're interested in getting to know them. So I think you're doing a good job.
So it's technically, according to the get database science, I do fit in the zone. Nice.
I think sustainable side. Yes.
And so I would love to give a small monologue by you.
Okay. So the key to having a successful relationship is bringing your most authentic self to the table. You don't want to try to pretend to be someone you're not. You want to put your best foot forward. Just make sure it's your foot that you're putting forward. Because the more authentic you can be and the best self that you bring to the table, the better chance you have of attracting the partner who's the right person for you. So make sure that you're practicing kindness, make sure you're practicing generosity, make sure you're practicing good communication, and make sure that you're bringing your best self to the table.
Absolutely, that is something that listening to it as well in general. I have learned a lot looking into your profile, looking into the get dateable thing, and preparing for this podcast and talking right now as well, because it clears a lot of opinions, and especially, these a lot of people think these are facts. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're opinions.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need validation from somebody who knows this.
Yeah.
Despite you think it's correct. So you might want your partner to communicate.
Yeah.
You want somebody to second this opinion who's professional, because the communication, the conversation until then stays it as an opinion.
Yes. Yes.
I 10 on 10 suggest people to go for couple therapy.
Absolutely.
Like, you are very valuable in the society, because a man is known to be a social animal.
Mhm.
We need people around us. You can't isolate yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
And that means you need to lead a prosperous life. You need to have prosperous relationships in your life.
Yeah.
That will again come down to the ideology of marking what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
From a third person perspective, what a couple therapist or a relationship therapist does.
Yep.
And I personally feel, if I can rank something in the psychological tracks, that clinical psychology, teen psychology, that all of the different categories that psychology has, I would for sure rank couple therapy and relationship advice as the highest, because it is something that every person posts. Rest of them can be avoided. So I might not have a mental issue.
Right.
I don't need a therapist for depression, maybe.
Right.
I might need a workout. Maybe a good plan.
Yeah.
But in a relationship, it's not that. I can't escape some of the things in a relationship, and every man, every woman goes through it.
Yes.
So I would surely suggest to anybody who's watching this and facing issues, reach out for help. Talk about them. Don't be shy that you can't talk about them, because ultimately, people like you are only there to help, not to judge.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a really great podcast. Any suggestions for me?
Say that again.
Any suggestions for me? How do you like?
I think you're doing a great job.
And how do you like podcast, the whole experience?
Yeah, I think it's fun. I like it because it's just like a conversation.
Absolutely. Let's keep that to that point, because I can ask you 100 questions and you can constantly answer them.
Yeah.
Makes a difference. I love to explain some part of my life that is related to it. Make it more as a conversation.
Yeah. It's more like a dialogue.
Yes.
Yes.
It makes much, much better results. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you regarding this.
Thanks so much for inviting me. It was fun.
Absolutely. And I really enjoyed this podcast. We would again collaborate some other point with few new questions. I'm absolutely sure the society will have new trends every once in a while.
I love it.
And I guess they'll exist one more episode at some point of time.
Yeah, let's do it.
Still. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming. And on that note, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you soon with some other content.